Mr. Rasmussen here. This is it. This is the moment you've all been waiting for, the very last advanced biology homework video of the year. It's right here. It's on muscle contraction. That's exciting. So this is it. I hope you've enjoyed the videos. I hope you've learned a lot from them. I hope they've been helpful for studying and stuff like that. So this is the last video you will have to watch for advanced biology. There you go. In this video, I want us to first think about all the amazing things that we do with our muscles. All these amazing activities, lifting, running, being in the Olympics. Olympic weightlifting is the picture I picked here. So like really impressive things we do with our muscles. But really, all of these actions are really simple. Muscles do one thing. All muscles do is get shorter. Every muscle in your body has all of its power from doing what we call contracting or getting shorter. So muscles get shorter. So if you want to lift this certain muscle groups in his legs are getting shorter that allow him to straighten his legs. Certain muscle groups in his back and abdomen are contracting to allow him to lift his back up. Certain muscle groups in his arm are going to contract to allow him to pull that weight up. So really, all the cool things that muscles do come from getting shorter. Now, muscles are made up of a whole bunch of muscle fibers. So if you imagine a bunch of just strands like this, and these muscle fibers are what actually do the contracting. So these muscle fibers, they get shorter. So really, all the actions that we do in our body are simply muscle fibers, or what we call myofibrils, getting shorter. That's important. Where we're going to go with this, we're going to look at the anatomy piece. There's one picture that we have left unlabeled in our packet. So we're going to look at that picture first. And then we're going to talk about how it works as far as sarcomeres go and stuff like that. And you'll learn what a sarcomere is and stuff of that nature. So this is muscle contraction. So basically think about it, a bunch of fibers getting shorter. If this is where we left off, this is the last picture, and this is of that muscle cell, and we walked through this. If you have any questions about what the muscle cell anatomy is, go back. But where I left off, we said that this muscle cell here, and you can kind of watch my pointer, this muscle cell here is made up of a whole bunch of these little things called myofibrils. So this muscle cell is made up of a whole bunch of pieces of these myofibrils. So this picture right here is just the anatomy of a myofibril. So there's lots of anatomy to know. We talked about the macro anatomy of the muscle, of how it's got these different tissue layers on it. And then we talked about that muscle is made up of a bunch of fascicles, and a fascicle is made up of a bunch of muscle fibers, and a muscle fiber is made up of a bunch of these myofibrils. So these myofibrils have a bunch of different parts that are really important to us. Now, they're essentially, and this is the hardest part to see about this picture, so I'm going to make this clear in the future. The hardest thing to see is there's two types of fibers in here. There's these, if you can watch my pointer out here, I'll just point it out again. There are these yellow fibers that run all the way through here. And there these short, lighter blue fibers here. Okay, so there's two types of fibers in a myofibril. And they are, the first one is actin. And actin, or we call them thin filaments. And they're these light blue filaments. And they run from this kind of jagged line here out to about here. So they stop. They don't go all the way through. And the other one we call thick filaments, or myosin. And myosin filaments are these dark yellow ones, and they go from about here all the way over to here. So they don't go all the way to this jagged line, or what we're going to call the Z lines. So they stop short. Okay, so made of these two fibers, and it's these fibers pulling on each other. It's these myosin fibers pulling on the actin that allows it to contract. So if we look over here, these parts, so the anatomy of it, these two jagged lines we call the Z lines. Z lines. Okay, and when this myofibril, or when this little region of the Z line gets shorter, these two lines are going to get closer together. So when they contract, the two Z lines get closer together. And this space from Z line to Z line down here in this box is called a sarcomere. So from Z line to Z line is called a sarcomere. Now there's a whole bunch of other regions on here. There's this kind of dark line in the middle, and we call that the M line. There's this space here, the space that only the myosin filaments. So if we go from this end of the myosin filament to this end of the myosin filament, we call that the A band. So the A band is the entire myosin filament. Then there's also the H zone. And this H zone in the middle is this area where there's no actin, where it's just myosin in a relaxed muscle cell, or in a relaxed, myofibril. And then the last one over here is this area around the Z lines where there is no myosin, so the myosin does not go into this area, and it's called the I band. It's just actin. So those are the parts. The I band surrounds the Z lines, and it's just actin. The H zone is just myosin, and it's in the center there. The M line's a dark line in the middle. The A band is the band that goes from end to end of the myosin. The Z lines are these jagged lines here, and then a sarcomere is from Z line to Z line. So that's our myofibril anatomy. Now, I want to look more at this sarcomere, and I want to look at what happens to sarcomeres when they contract. So if I take a look here, I drew this out, and this is a sarcomere. So a very simple sarcomere that we'll talk about. And essentially, sarcomeres are just the contractile unit of a muscle cell. It's these parts of the muscle cell that are what's going to shrink or contract or get smaller. So if we take a look here, I'm going to get out my pen tool and we're going to do some writing on it. This line here, this green line, is that Z line, just to make life easy for us. It's not jagged here, but this is our Z lines, and this is another Z line down here. Okay, so this thick filament, the dark blue, is our myosin, and this red line here is our actin thin filaments. So as you can see, they sort of overlap. The Z lines connect the actin thin filaments together, and the myosin here is in the middle here. That allows this zone here we call the H zone. Okay, and then this part here above it, this is the A band, the A band. Okay, and in the middle here there's that M line, and then there's this zone here where from here to here, and it actually extends over on the other one, and this is called the I band. Okay, so it's this sarcomere that's going to get shortened, and I want to shorten it, and I want to show you what happens. So when this thing contracts, okay, so when it contracts, these two, the actin filaments, get pulled closer together by the myosin, which means, look at this, the Z lines have moved closer together. So the Z lines have moved over. So now the Z line, from Z line to Z line, is a shorter distance. So these Z lines have shrunk together. Take a look at this H band. The H band is way smaller. It may not even exist. It may not even exist. You may not even see it in a sarcomere picture. So the H zone is gone. The A band is completely unchanged. Completely unchanged. It's all just the same. The I band over here, the I band, you may not see it, but it actually gets shorter. It contracts. The way this looks, it doesn't look like it got shorter, but we moved the Z line over, so the I band actually got smaller. So when a sarcomere contracts, or when a muscle cell contracts, it's these myosin, and this is the myosin right here, and this is the actin. It's the myosin filaments pulling the actin in towards the center is that's what causes this muscle cell to contract. So the myosin pulling the actin filaments in causes that H zone to shorten up. The A band stays the same, and these Z lines move closer together. So if we have a whole bunch of these sarcomeres put together, so if I can, just going to draw this out, if we imagine a whole bunch of these sarcomeres out here put together, if they contract, so if these two contract, they're going to get closer together. And these two contract, they're going to get closer together. And these two contract, they're going to get closer together. So these individual sarcomeres are making this whole myofibril get way shorter. Way shorter. So sarcomeres are what's actually contracting in a muscle cell, and it's the myosin filaments pulling on the actin that pulls these Z bands closer together, and that makes something shorter like the H zones and the I bands and stuff like that. That's essentially muscle contraction. All of that right here, this whole sarcomere, I'm going to back up here. This whole sarcomere, oh, backed up too much. This whole sarcomere here getting smaller allows us to do all these things that muscle cells do. It allows us to lift weights. It allows us to do all the amazing things that we can do as human beings. Simply enough, muscle contraction is just sarcomeres getting shorter. Okay, if you have any questions about that in class, come find me. I'd love to explain it to you again. If you have any questions, let me know. That's the last advanced biology video. All right, have a good day, class. Bye.